And welcome into the Thursday edition of Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063 The Game, brought to you by Chuck McDowell and Medical House Calls, Middle Tennessee's best medical care in the comfort and safety of your own home. For more information, go to medicalhousecalls.com. Medical House Calls, where the nearest clinic is your home. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keyser here with you on this Thursday morning. Joe Rexrode, good morning. How are you?
Great. The SEC tournament got going yesterday, and
It did.
I must say, they mostly filled the place. Certainly the lower, which I don't think I've seen on a Wednesday. So take that for whatever you will.
Well, people fired up to watch Jerry Stackhouse coach last night, Joe. That's the only thing I can take away from it.
It could be, or maybe Eric Musselman taking his shirt off, which he may have tried to do during that crazy comeback for Arkansas.
Yeah, maybe so. Nick Keyser, good morning. How are you?
Doing great, fellas. Glad to be back with you this morning, and everyone's on time for the second day in a row, so that's nice.
There we go. There we go. Get it in there. I like it. Throwing some strays already.
Absolutely.
I'm just glad that you're here. That's all.
Yeah, take those shots. I like it. I like it. It's all fair.
I'm just glad that we don't have Sleepy Joe still on a problem with him not being present. So, thanks, Joe.
Sleepy Joe now. Okay. All right. Don't start. Hey, don't you don't want to start a nickname war with me. Just remember that.
Oh boy.
I have some pretty bad ones too for myself growing up. So
there we go. There we go. Well, we got a lot to get to today. The Titans have made things very interesting here. We're going to get through that throughout the show. The Predators march up to Winnipeg last night and play a great game. They win 4-2. They gave up kind of two garbage time goals at the end, but a fantastic performance from the Predators last night. They're now 11-0-2 in their last 13 games, a 13-game point streak. And I realize, Joe, real quickly to touch on that before we get into the Calvin Ridley stuff. I realized that Winnipeg did not have Mark Scheifele last night, and that's a gigantic loss for them in terms of he was out unexpectedly with an illness. So that's a huge loss for them in the game. The Predators kicked their butt last night from really head to toe and from start to finish in that game. The Predators kicked their butt, and that was impressive. It was really impressive to see them do that, go into Winnipeg, play the way that they did. And 13 game point streak, the third longest in franchise history. That's a heck of a job by the Preds last night.
Yeah, man. I mean, this team is on one, man. I mean, like at some point, because I honestly, through all this, I've kind of looked at like, look, I mean, great hot streak. You're gonna have highs and lows. You're gonna get on a run. You're gonna get in a bad rut. These happened. 82 games happens to everybody. I don't know, man. It feels more. Maybe I'm a little late to the party on this, I guess, but it feels a little bit more like there's some sustainable things going on. That there's just some things that have clicked, and that this team is really embracing the new way it plays, and there's some guys playing just great hockey individually too.
Yeah, exactly. And they looked great again last night. Looked connected last night, and big win for them. We're going to get back into them in the 7 o'clock hour, discuss their win in Winnipeg and what that means for them in the playoff race, where that puts them in the standings, all those different things. Big win by the Preds last night against the Winnipeg Jets. And Joe, huge news yesterday for the Tennessee Titans. So I was scrolling and perusing through Twitter and saw where the Titans had just signed Mason Rudolph to be their backup quarterback, to which Stillman was going absolutely nuts about the signing of Mason Rudolph on his program. And not 5 to 10 minutes later, Calvin Ridley signs a deal with the Tennessee Titans. 4 years, $92 million, $50 million guaranteed money that Calvin Ridley will get to be the newest member of the Tennessee Titans. And the Titans go after a big fish in free agency. They get Ridley. He now joins DeAndre Hopkins and Treylon Burks on the receiving corps. And the Titans spend a lot of money in order to bring Calvin Ridley in. What did you make of that move, and what do you make of the addition of Calvin Ridley to this Titans offense?
Well, first of all, what was the Jared reaction to that? Was he like, "Oh, yay, never mind"?
He was definitely not like, never mind. I mean, the Mason Rudolph thing was a consistent theme yesterday after that happened. But he did enjoy the willingness to spend the money.
Okay, before I get into Ridley, because I've seen some other people angry. I mean, I feel like people are almost reacting like they think Mason Rudolph's coming here to be the starter. Am I crazy that he's fine as a backup? I mean, he's not
I
great
don't.
by any
Yeah,
means. He's a fine QB too.
I mean, he wouldn't have been my first choice, but I don't like have some super problem with Mason Rudolph.
I mean, Mason Rudolph, I've seen him actually play well and win NFL football games
Yeah.
by playing well. I'm
Yeah,
like, what am I
when
missing?
somebody's not chasing him down with their helmet trying to kill him, he's I think he's been okay in this league.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I would have preferred Dobbs. You know, that's me, but I don't see what the Mason Rudolph signing is. It's cheaper. And look, I mean, Flacco, that would have been better. Would have been what, $3-4 more million too,
Yeah.
right? I mean, not as far away, but they're far overall, I think, from being like, you know, a team that is going to win the AFC South or get the playoffs next year. I think, you know, maybe that's starting to shift, but regardless, you know, you keep your starter healthy, you have a decent backup who could win you a game. That's what they have. Ridley, I don't know. I go back and forth. I mean, first of all, wow, that's a big deal. That's a big signing. And we were just talking about, I think we were talking, at least in theory, right, about the corner talent for the Titans. If you had Sneed, which I don't think is happening now, along with, you know, Awuzie comes in and McCreary's a good player. Like, how's that compared to some of the best groups the Titans have had? You tell me. I mean, D-Mace was a great player. There wasn't really a great player with him. They've never had two receivers like Hopkins and Ridley.
Not at the same time, I don't think. I mean, you know, I'm thinking with A.J. Brown, Corey Davis was definitely not
No.
that. So, no, I don't think they've ever had at the same time together two receivers like this. I mean, look, D-Mace and at the time, Drew Bennett were pretty good, but Drew Bennett is not. I mean, Drew Bennett was a really good player. Drew Bennett was not Calvin Ridley or DeAndre Hopkins. So, no, I don't think they've ever had two together at the same time like this.
So, look, I'm fascinated. The Titans, to me, have become probably a lot more watchable this week, right? I mean, certainly we still don't know how they're addressing everything up front. And if you don't address that effectively, then you can have all the skill you want, and, you know, there's going to be limitations. But you think about this offense, you know, even just the difference with not having the reliance on one bell cow back, having two backs who catch passes, and now having Hopkins and Ridley. And then you think about, even to me, like, I think this is very interesting for Treylon Burks, maybe very beneficial. You know, your wide receiver 3, the pressure's kind of off. See what you can do, you know, might really benefit him. I mean, I mean, Will Levis has got to be thrilled.
Well, Will Levis has to be thrilled. I hope Treylon Burks is not wide receiver 3. And I tweeted this out yesterday. Like, to me, this does not change up my draft strategy all that much if I'm the Titans. And maybe it will for them, but to me, it doesn't. Like, I think it does put into focus what they're going to do at 7 pretty clearly. Like, 7 at this point, you're going left tackle. Like, when you just paid the money to get Calvin Ridley and you've got DeAndre Hopkins on your team, you're probably going left tackle at number 7. I still think, Joe, if there's a receiver there that you really like at 38, you take him. I mean, DeAndre Hopkins has 1 year left on his deal, and at some point you're going to need to replace him. And besides, I tweeted this yesterday, you can have multiple playmakers. I think that's the approach the Titans need to take. Now, is that the approach they're going to take after spending the money on Calvin Ridley? I don't know. I'm less convinced of that today, but I still would be looking pretty hard at a receiver in the second round. That's just me.
No, I totally agree. So fine, Burks could be wide receiver 4, but I agree because Hopkins has a year left. I mean, yeah, and it's a great draft for receivers. So absolutely. Yeah, and you have to see how it all plays out. Could there be a move down? You know, I mean, who knows? But I'm with you. If you can, with one of those 2 picks, and I agree, it should probably be the second one now, right? I mean, you should. No, I mean,
unless you want to just really load up at wide receiver, man. Here's Roma Dunze. Here's Calvin Ridley and DeAndre Hopkins along with you.
Just just snap it and throw it, and something good's gonna happen. Yeah, don't worry about the protection. Snap it and throw it, man. Do a punt, do like a punt, shotgun snap. I mean,
Yeah.
Will Levis has a huge arm. Just put him back in like punt formation and just throw. Uh, yeah, no, I think for sure there's going to be some very good receivers there, and you have to plan for long term you're going to have Ridley. Burks has to, we'll see. I mean, it's a huge year for him. He's probably going to get less opportunities now,
Yeah.
especially if they draft another receiver. But also, I mean, he could still, I mean, to me, be some kind of a factor. I still think he's too talented to just dismiss altogether. Then you draft a receiver, and then you're set in the future, and you probably just have this 1 year left of Hopkins. I mean, maybe not. Maybe he'll want to stick around, and they can extend him. But that's why you draft a receiver. So no doubt. But I guess regardless, Burks moves down. Burks has less pressure, maybe less opportunity, but I don't know. I feel like in certain situations, and again, we don't know the who, if, and when who on another receiver, but in certain situations, the matchups could be pretty sweet for him out there with those
Yeah.
two guys on the field as well.
No question. And look, I mean, Calvin Ridley, I'm kind of with you. I go back and forth on this deal and the money. And look, the money part of it, I mean, look, if you're going to spend to get a wide receiver, you're the top wide receiver available in free agency, you're probably going to overpay. And I think you can make a pretty good argument that the Titans have overpaid for Calvin Ridley, but that just kind of is what it is when it comes to free agency. We'll see what's he got left in the tank. Like that's really the question to me. I mean, he's 29. And he was good last year, right? 76 catches, over 1,000 yards, 8 touchdowns in Jacksonville, and he certainly kicked the Titans' butt twice. I mean, had over 100 yards receiving both games against the Titans. So Rand Carthon got a kind of a firsthand look of what that looked like. What's that going to mean for him moving forward now that he's got the new contract? One of the things that I would have to go back and watch too, Joe, that I don't know the answer to, and how much of this is him, how much of it is Trevor Lawrence? But he had 76 catches, which is a good number. He was targeted almost 140 times, 136 times. That's a catch percentage of 55.9%. And you'd like to see that a lot higher than that. So
Yeah,
how much of that is, just errant throws by Trevor Lawrence, or Trevor Lawrence basically throwing it away in the direction of Calvin Ridley? I don't know.
not being
Like
not being on the same page,
right.
whatever it
Like
is. Yeah.
I'd like to, that would require some deep film study to go back and look at that. But it's a really interesting move. Certainly, if you're Will Levis, you're really happy today. And now the Titans have gotten, two proven options. I mean, Calvin Ridley's a proven player. He's a good player. When he's on, he's a good player. So they've got two proven options now at wide receiver in Hopkins and Ridley.
Yeah, I mean yeah, just Ridley to me like that. He has that. I mean, he's not. No one's Tyreek Hill, but just straight up speed, because obviously that's not really Hopkins' game. But I mean, that is Ridley's game. I mean, he's still now he's 29, and so then you get into the size of the contract and the age and how much longer and all these things, right? But just the speed element he brings is a little different than what the Titans have had.
No question about it. Calvin Ridley signing with the Tennessee Titans. We'll take your reaction to that. What do you make of the deal? What do you make of how he fits into this offense with Will Levis and DeAndre Hopkins? We'll take your thoughts on all that. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. More on that next. Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063, the game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, live from our Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Game Nashville studios, keeping your home feeling comfortable all year round. The Titans signed Calvin Ridley, 4 years, $92 million, $50 million guaranteed, and they have bolstered their wide receiver group, spending the biggest name in free agency in Calvin Ridley, bringing him to the Titans. Hopkins, Ridley, Burks, maybe a draft pick to go along with that. Could be a very interesting receiving core that they've got coming up next season. Taking your thoughts on that, 615-737-1025. Let's go to our 1025 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, and welcome in Adam in Portland. Adam, good morning. Thanks for calling in.
Hey, Robby, man, did you give up on Kyle Phillips? You don't ever say his name.
I have given up on Kyle Phillips. Rexrode, I believe, still has his Kyle Phillips flag firmly waving.
Kyle Phillips, NWI, somebody's going to get a heck of a duo.
He's not – I thought he was – when he's on the field, he's only been on the field like 2% of the time since we drafted him, but when he's on there, he's okay. So check this out, dude. This is my question. We're all – Robby, I'm fairly certain you're over 30. Why do people treat 30-year-olds like they're out here getting senior discounts? It really makes me mad. I've heard it. I hear it online a lot. I'm like, he's 30. You gave 4 years to a 30-year-old. I'm like – dude, like, this is not – I'm no closer to retire. I'm 37. I've got a long way to go to retirement, dude. Like, I've got to work for a long time. And this dude, he's still blazing speed, right? Like, what am I missing? Why do people treat 30-year-olds like that, dude? It's ridiculous. I get the running back
It's
thing.
the NFL.
Especially with, like, Derek, if he's already put on – if he's already spent, like, 80%, 90% of his career, I understand that. But, like, Calvin Ridley's not slowing down at 30 years old. I think he's an elite athlete. Like, he's in the prime of his career. Well, I hate defending that, and I've defended it before, but, like, I've got to work a lot longer. Life is not over for me at 30. I think it's weird.
Yep, thanks for the call, Adam. Well, life's not going to be over for Calvin Ridley, but
yeah, I'm sure he'll live a fine life.
at some point he is going to slow down. Now, you're hoping that that's when he's like, 34, 35.
Yeah, you hope
somewhere in that neighborhood.
Yeah, not until the contract runs out, and then he plays out the entire contract. Yeah, I do think that. Well, yeah, like I think so. Players like Hopkins have a little more longevity, right? I think its style of player matters too. I'm trying to think like speed receivers who were still that well into their 30s. Because even Randy Moss was everything. Randy Moss was big. He would out jump everybody. He'd catch every 50-50 ball, but obviously he was also super fast. He got into his 30s. I think
for sure.
Still very good.
Titans legend.
Yeah. Certainly it's not the same as running back, no doubt. The wear and tear is totally different. But I think sometimes if that's your best feature, then you do once you get into the 30s, and you're concerned that slows down a little bit. But as of now, I think last year Calvin Ridley answered a lot. Even though it wasn't as you laid out, Robby, it wasn't a perfect year. But yeah, 1,000-yard season when you missed the season for the gambling suspension, and the year before you had the broken foot, so you barely played. He hadn't played football in a while, and all this stuff had happened. So I thought, really, given the circumstances, it was a pretty good. Obviously, it was his prove-it season, and he proved it enough for the Titans to pay him like this.
Joe, are you sitting down? You ready for this?
Okay. Yes.
More wide receiver news for the Tennessee Titans. The Titans, according to Mike Garafolo, are bringing back Nick Westbrook-Akine, 1-year deal. NWI's back, baby.
I tell you what, let Rand cook. That's all I have to say. Let Rand cook. Good for them. Good for him. Good for him. Good for him and good for them, And hey, man, you're talking about, it's interesting because obviously Hopkins is a great player, the Hall of Famer. And so you've got his veteran presence. And Ridley's been in the league a long time. But I do feel like a guy like NWI is a great guy to have in a room. To keep in a room, with those guys. So good for NWI.
The Titans receiving room starting to shape up, baby. Hopkins, Ridley, Burks, NWI. There's 4 spots right there.
So is it are they drafting someone at 38, or is Cal Phillips the final piece of greatness?
I don't know. That's a good question. I mean, God, I hope they're drafting somebody at 38, but maybe they're not. Maybe they're going to draft like a inside linebacker at number 38. Let's go back to our 1025 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Welcome in Mike in Gallatin. Mike, good morning. Thanks for calling in.
Hey, guys. Good morning. So as a Titans fan, I'm just excited to see them spend the money on players that I think that will actually garner attention to the television screen. Like, I understand that we have a whole lot of spots that we got to fill places, but I mean, if you're going to want to watch a Titans game, we got to have players that excite you, and Calvin Ridley definitely brings that to the table. The question that I have at the moment is, we lost Henry, we lost Aziz to an extent, Autry. That's a lot of locker room leadership presence and guys that I would deem as culture setters for the team. And again, some of those guys that were new, again, I said, within reason. But I don't know right now if I can pick out the captains for who the Titans could look at. Again, and there's some obvious ones on one on each side of the ball that makes sense. But again, it's going to be interesting to see where where the Titans can place that C on for this upcoming season. And before I run, I think you guys forgot about this dangerous Titans pair in 2010. Kenny Britt and Randy Moss, baby. We had
Oh yeah.
Come
How can we
on.
forget that? Yeah, you're right. That's on us.
Thanks, guys.
Andre Johnson and Kendall Wright.
Yeah.
Come on, man. Come on.
Julio and AJ.
Well, that's the thing.
That's what we thought
man.
it was going to be.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That in terms of going in before we actually saw Julio Jones play that year, without question, right?
Yeah.
That was going to be that. Yeah, the leadership thing's an interesting point. Yeah, I think Aziz definitely. Yeah, those guys were very good in that way. If we're just talking about the defense, I mean Simmons, Landry, Hooker, those are strong. Those are strong leaders. McCreary. Going into year 3, McCreary's a guy who he's a heck of a football player and a professional. So.
And I have no clue about a Woozy, but he could be too. Who knows?
Yeah, no, I all indications are also that he'll be a great addition in that way. So, Aziz was a good leader, and Autry was definitely strong. Not a vocal guy, but a strong presence. But yeah, I think they're going to be okay in that way. My question is, are they going to have someone else up front to help Jeffrey Simmons because he needs help?
Let's go back to our 1025 The Game phone line. Welcome in Ed in New Jersey. Ed, good morning. Thanks for calling in.
Good morning, guys. I will steal a point that I read last night as I was addictively refreshing my timeline to see any news, which is, I think, a problem at 54 years old. But anyway, I was reading about a good point about, all the money that they're spending. There's going to be some backlash from the national media or, these pundits out there that will say, money can't buy this, money. And that's true. But it's not like they're sacrificing all this money that they're spending on not renewing or upping homegrown talent, because they have no homegrown talent. They haven't drafted well. So they locked up Simmons already. So all this money they're spending, it's not really as much a risk, the way I see it, as opposed to other teams, because you stunk. You need talent. And it's not like you're sacrificing homegrown people for it. So I think it's a little overblown when that narrative starts rising.
Yep. Thanks for the call, Ed. I mean, I agree with that part of it. I mean, we've talked about that, Joe. I mean, the Titans, the drafting has been poor, and that's why the former general manager is no longer employed. And, in order to bolster the roster, I mean, look, there's a ton of holes they had ending in this year. And even after the money that they've spent, there's still a ton of holes on this roster. So there's a lot of work left to be done with this group. But that's why, I think a lot of people saw the money yesterday, especially around the league for Ridley. It was like, oh my God, 4 years, $92 million, $50 million guaranteed. That part of it, I mean, that bothered me less than just what's he going to be 2 years down the road. I don't know the answer, but the money part of it really didn't bother me all that much because I knew that was like if you're gonna get the top free agent wide receiver, you're going to overpay. I mean, that's what it is.
Absolutely. I mean, there is just zero question about it. So, and we can get into something that drove me crazy about this next too, because it is amazing. Another great example of like people not realizing the Tennessee Titans are in the NFL.
Well, we will do that. Coming up next, more on the Calvin Ridley signing by the Titans. Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063, the game. Join 1025 1063 The Game in Guinness for Pinewood Madness Patio SEC Watch Party tomorrow. 1025 The Game will be broadcasting live from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Stop by, enter for your chance to win tickets to see Green Day. You can showcase your skills in Pinewood Social's arcade basketball game competition, win tournament tickets, and watch all the televised games on their jumbo LED screen. For more details, visit thegamenashville.com/events. Once again, that's thegamenashville.com/events. Discussing the signing of Calvin Ridley. And Joe, there was a part of this yesterday that drove you nuts on the social medias. What was that?
Yeah, I wrote a little bit about this, and I think I wrote about the Ridley signing at the Athletic, but yeah, it's just everywhere. I mean, maybe it was everywhere because it was like a couple people, and then everybody around here was like quote tweeting. I suppose that's possible, but this whole like, this idiot franchise wouldn't give this deal to AJ Brown, and now they give it to Calvin Ridley. And it's like, that's why the GM was fired, bro. It's not the same front office. And this is why it's not the same front office. I mean, I guess, hey, look, I judge some franchises purely by ownership. Detroit Lions. Hello. Looking at you, Lions. So, I mean, there are things like that can sort of become, I guess, like GM proof. But yeah, I mean, anybody who kind of follows the Titans knows about the trade, knows about the fact that the GM who made the trade got fired in the middle of the season a few months later when the Eagles fans were screaming at the owner and like middle finger thanking her for AJ Brown. And so now they're doing this. So I just, it's like, do you not understand? I don't expect people to closely follow the Tennessee Titans relative to the NFL. That's just how it's going to be. But maybe a little bit. God.
I did see a lot of that yesterday they wouldn't pay AJ Brown, but they're getting Calvin Ridley in there. And it's like, yeah, there's not only is the GM gone, the coach is gone. It's completely different. There's a new coaching staff. There's a new general manager. I will get, they are correct. The owner is the same. So if that's who you want to blame for the AJ Brown stuff, then okay, the owner is the same, but everybody else is different when it comes to the decision-making process. So we'll see how it goes. Hey, look, if you're asking me, Joe, would I have rather pay AJ Brown or Calvin Ridley? I think we know the answer. AJ Brown's my answer, but hard to go back in time and fix that one.
Yeah, I mean, there's no one I don't think there's anyone other than someone related to Calvin Ridley who would argue otherwise. But I got to say, okay, I got Indy Ben, though. I got Indy Ben, who I expect to be trembling in his boots. This is what he says. Quote, this signing, I'm not upset about it all, really. Titans would worry me more if they got a Neighbors at Dunze, one of those high second-round receivers, more so than Ridley. I think the Titans go pass rush or corner early round 2. What are your thoughts on Rudolph as backup QB? And how about Flacco? So really, you're coming here to dunk on us for Flacco, Indy Ben. Is that it? Is that it, Indy Ben? Huh?
That's what it is.
Not Flacco. No, look, I like Flacco better than Mason Rudolph. He costs about twice as much, I think. A few million more. I really don't have a problem with Mason Rudolph as backup QB. I'm sorry. It's fine. He's probably middle of the pack. He's at least a QB who has won games in the NFL, and that's what they've needed. And, technically it'll be Rudolph and Malik Willis competing, so we'll see.
It will not be.
Yeah, I mean, like he'll be there. They'll be out there. Yeah. I mean, that's technically the situation, but expect him to be QB2, and it's an upgrade, and it's fine. Like Flacco last year, amazing story, right? I mean, no doubt about it, amazing story. But it's also like, who knows, man? I mean, like when he was done before that, no one wanted to see him play another down in the NFL. So I have seen some things with Mason Rudolph that were pretty good.
I got a texter that says, do y'all believe Burks could be on the trading block with the pickup of Ridley and better prospects available via the draft? If so, how do you feel about Ladd McConkey at number 38 overall? What do you make of the first part of that? I mean, the trading block part of it, who's trading for Treylon Burks right now? And if they are, what are they giving up? Like a sixth?
Yeah. I mean, unless he's part of something, a part of a bigger deal, haul. I mean, I could see a team
being like to Kansas City, get L'Jarius Sneed back with a third round pick.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, someone threw that out there on
Burks
the
catches
text line.
1,400 yards with Patrick Mahomes. It'd be fun.
Yeah, exactly. It becomes an instant all pro. Yeah. If he's part of something, then I guess, yeah, straight up, there's no return really. A lot of people ask about different guys at 38, Tavondre Sweat or someone left tackle, and then you get a right tackle there. To me, I'm with you on receiver. I mean, I think you absolutely try in this draft to get a receiver. You can get, I mean, you look at this draft, there's some good guys that may be there in the 4th round too. So I do think that if you address left tackle and get your guy there at the top of the draft, then I'm certainly, I think best available is, it could go different ways at 38. I'm not saying, I don't think you have to be, now you have to get a receiver. If the best available is a receiver, then yes, do that. But maybe it is a Sweat or an edge, something like that. Another offensive lineman, I guess, could be, but I'd be a little surprised if they went tackle.
So how good can this Titans offense be based solely on the moves that they've made in free agency at the skill positions to this point? We'll get into that a little bit deeper coming up next. Take your thoughts as well. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. 615-737-1025. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063 The Game. Hey, Robbie Stanley here, and you can bet the NBA with a no-sweat same-game parlay from FanDuel every Thursday with TNT Thursdays. It doesn't matter if you're new to FanDuel or already have an account. You'll get bonus bets back if your same-game parlay doesn't win on any NBA on TNT game. NBA same-game parlays are the perfect way to combine your bets for a chance to score a bigger payday. The Suns and the Celtics coming up tonight. I got the Celtics winning the game, and I've got Jason Tatum going nuts in this game, going the over on points. But you can take it any way you want to take it. However you want to play, just head to FanDuel.com/Rob to bet the NBA with a no-sweat same-game parlay with TNT Thursdays. Once again, that's FanDuel.com/Rob. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. You must be 21 or older and present in Tennessee. Minimum 3-leg parlay required. Refund issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expire 7 days after receipt. Max refund of $5 unless otherwise specified. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Got a gambling problem? Call the Tennessee Red Line at 1-800-889-9789. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robbie Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keyser here with you on this Thursday morning. I got some tickets to give away, a pair of tickets to see Cody Jinks coming up at Ascend Amphitheater on Saturday, April 27th. Be caller number 3, 615-737-1025, our phone number. Caller number 3 will win a pair of tickets to see Cody Jinks at Ascend Amphitheater coming up on Saturday, April 27th. So, Joe, we know the Calvin Ridley signing has taken place. Lloyd Cushenberry joining the team up the middle at center. Tony Pollard at the running back position. So the Titans have been active this week on the free agent front and have been active on the offensive side of the football. So let's play this out a little bit, and let's assume that they go left tackle at number 7. So you've got a rookie high draft pick at left tackle. You've got Skoronski at left guard, Cushenberry at center, probably Brunskill at right guard, and then an unknown at right tackle. And I still, that's a really intriguing piece left of the offseason. They've either got to figure that out or they're going with somebody they already have and hoping Bill Callahan can coach them up. Put that offense out there with Will Levis and Hopkins and now Ridley, Tony Pollard, Tajay Spears. How good do you think this offense can be based on the additions that they have made and what I think we now all expect to happen at number 7 overall with a left tackle being selected?
The funny thing about talking about this offense, Robby, is that go way back, and I know we've had the discussion, like you start with that left tackle, you fix that, and everything else can fall into place, and then you address those. And of course, they're going backward, but that's just the timing of the situation, right? I mean, they're gonna be in position to get a cornerstone guy, and how many of those guys do they consider a cornerstone guy? Like that, I don't know. Do they need to move up? Can they move down and still get someone they? I don't know, but if you do, if you address that correctly, if you address that and you're right, and you hit and you get your guy, I mean, this could be a transformative offseason. We've also talked about the idea that I flatly reject, that a lot of people say, which is you can't fix an offensive line in one off season. The Titans did exactly that in 2016. The only difference being that they already had the franchise left tackle. He just hadn't figured it out. So,
right.
That did make it. It's not like they got him and Conklin and Ben Jones, but they got Conklin and Ben Jones. Lawan clicked for him, and it clicked for him with a new offense, and it all came together. And guard was not great, but it was fine. So you think about what Skoronski, and I don't know if Skoronski's going to be great. I think his rookie year, you saw the makings of a good player. They needed him to be a great player where they drafted him. But you think about him if he has a good left tackle on one side, and then if Cushenberry is what we think he is at center.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, that's a very different situation. I mean, if you're sandwiched by bad players, and I don't think Aaron Brewer was bad. I think the Dolphins paying Aaron Brewer tells you there are pluses and minuses with him. His athleticism is a plus in some ways. He gets mauled by big guys, so he wasn't bad, but you can be better. So, and obviously left tackle was a disaster, just a complete flat disaster. So here's this rookie, and he's just got it's just terrible next to him. So now what if it's really good on both sides of him? Then the right side still isn't figured out. I mean, I don't know what Charles is. I don't know, if he's a guy who can get in there. Can he compete with Brunskill at right guard? I don't know, but I think Brunskill's fine. I mean, you're not going to address every single spot. So then it comes down to right tackle. If they can be okay at right tackle, okay. Now with 2 receivers like that, and now with 2 pass catching running backs in a different scheme, still feel like it now that we're going through the whole list. Maybe they need to do something else at tight end at some point. How about Brock Bowers at number 7? That's not going to happen. But it looks like it could be really, really different. I mean, and much better. So it's all about, to me, it's all about that guy at left tackle. If that works and you have a rookie come in here and play right away, then it's just it's gonna be almost unrecognizable from what it has been the past 2 years.
Well, then you factor in, the change in scheme, and then Brian Callahan coming in, and what's that going to look like? It's really intriguing. Like the offensive side of the ball, I think has a chance to be dramatically different, not only in terms of the way they play, but how effective they are. I mean, if you hit it left tackle, I feel great about Cushenberry. That has the makings of a pretty good offensive line. And I'm with you. Like Skoronski, if you hit it this left tackle pick, probably can't ask for a better situation than Cushenberry at center, a reliable left tackle on the other side of him, and how much is that going to help his game overall? And then you look at wide receiver. I mean, Hopkins will be 32, so there is that. Does his game drop off a little bit? I mean, based on what we saw last year, I mean, the guy is so crafty. He knows how to get open. He had 75 catches for 1,000 yards. It is interesting. We were talking about the catch percentage for Ridley earlier. I mean, it's basically the exact same for Hopkins, right? 75 catches on 137 targets. So, I mean, it's basically, I mean, their numbers are almost identical as to what they did last year. So with them two together in the first, in kind of the first iteration of this offense, what's that going to look like? And then there's the back part of it too, right? With Pollard and Spears and how they use that dynamic. Or John McClain on with Chasing Big Joe yesterday, and he was talking about, Pollard coming off the injury. The numbers went down, the metrics went down, but now that he's healthy, could those rebound next season? I mean, that's what you're hoping if you're the Titans at that point.
It appeared that he strengthened as the season went on. It definitely, I don't think he was ready at the beginning of the year. One thing we haven't talked about with Ridley, and I've seen people refer to this, I did not hear it, but Jared's not alone talking about character concerns. I mean, we've heard Kaharski with to me, and before the Titans ever signed, got into this thing with Ridley, I was kind of like, okay, but this, some people think if he gets a lot of money, it'll be bet. Okay. I mean, I don't know. It's a little flimsy to me. There is the gambling thing, obviously, which made a mistake. Clearly,
a lot of jokes about that yesterday.
Sure, and it was dumb without question. But is it fair to say character concerns? I mean, am I missing something there? I don't know. I mean, so he had the gambling suspension, and Kaharski knows someone who's worried about what happens if he gets the bag. What else?
Well, I mean, Kaharski says he's heard it from multiple people. So who are those people? What exactly they told him? I don't know. So I mean, it's hard for me to have much of an opinion on that, basically, because I mean, they're not telling me. So I don't know. I don't know what that translates to. I mean, if you're going character issue just based solely on the gambling part of it, it's hard for me to get there. I mean, like you said, was it stupid? Yeah. So be smarter than that moving forward, and hopefully he learned his lesson on that front. But it's hard for me to get to major red flag character issue based on nothing more than the gambling. It would have to be more than that for me to go there.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I mean, given where things are with gambling now, if he's betting against his team and throwing games, then I got a big issue with the guy. Short of that, I don't know, man. It's tough sell for me. And another thing to keep in mind, of course, Nick Holtz is with him last year in Jacksonville. Correct. I have a hard time buying that the Titans are doing what they did. First of all, without getting every bit of info, and it's not like Nick Holt's the only guy in this building that has any knowledge of Calvin Ridley, but he's passing game coordinator working with him every day. I got to think his input was valued here, and I got to think it was pretty positive in terms of working with him, how he goes about his business day to day. If they went out and did this, right? I would hope so.
I would hope so too. Now, then the question becomes, what I would really love to know, is how much did Jacksonville really want to keep him? Because they went out and they got Gabe Davis, and not that you couldn't go get Gabe Davis and get Calvin Ridley. I mean, we were talking yesterday about it felt like the Patriots and the Jags were the two teams that were in on Ridley, and now the Titans have come out of nowhere. So was it just the money that was the holdup? Why did he not come to another deal with Jacksonville, I guess is my question. That would be something I'd love to know.
The reporting seems to suggest that they wanted him back and that maybe Zay Jones was the odd man out. But I don't know that. I mean, it had been framed. Some NFL reporters were talking about basically the Pats and Jags in a battle, right?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden Titans come in and outbid both of them. So, but yeah, you're right. I mean, whenever someone then leaves a place, it's like, well, why were they okay with that? Were they, or did they just get outbid?
Yeah, it's a good question. 615-737-1025, our phone number. More on the Ridley signing. Plus, we'll get into the Mason Rudolph signing and another big move under the radar yesterday, Joe, but one that I really like for the Titans. We'll get into that. Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063, the game. Hour number 2, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, brought to you by Chuck McDowell Medical House Calls, Middle Tennessee's best medical care in the comfort and safety of your own home. For more information, go to medicalhousecalls.com. Medical House Calls, where the nearest clinic is your home. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keyser here with you on this Thursday morning. We'll have Gentry Estes from the Tennessean joining the program at 7:30. We'll get his thoughts on the Calvin Ridley signing and what that means for the Titans. Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports for his weekly visit from 8 to 8:30. We got a lot to get into with Charles, so looking forward to that coming up next hour here on the program. So the Titans signed Calvin Ridley. We've gone extensively over that contract, that deal, what that means for the Titans. We'll continue to take your thoughts on that. Mason Rudolph signed as backup quarterback yesterday. And Joe, an underrated move yesterday. Nick Folk back in the fold here with the Titans. We talked about that the other day. Nick Folk, what's going on? Why has he not been signed? And now he's back with the Tennessee Titans. So they get their kicker, their receiver, their backup quarterback. And earlier this morning, for those who missed it, NWI also back in the fold as well, coming back to the Titans on a 1-year deal. So Rand Carthon has been busy, but Joe, it was good to see Nick Folk back in the fold yesterday.
Yeah, no, that's a good thing. That is a good thing. You've been fretting about it. So
I have.
You can ease your mind now. I mean, he was fantastic last year. So you still have the eventual need, and not eventual not being too long from now, need to find the next long-term kicker who's actually good enough to stay on your team and be your long-term kicker. But I guess you could, just like we're talking about the AJ Brown thing, I guess that's kind of like a J-Rob problem too, right? So, I mean, Rand has been here a year, but it does feel so much like it's his first year, doesn't it? Like
it does.
It's like his first and a half year.
It does. It kind of feels that way. And look, I like, for the most part, what the Titans have done this week. It could be a disaster. I don't know. Like, I mean,
sure.
Calvin Ridley may not work out. I mean, it's hard for me to picture Cushenberry not working out based on what he's done to this point in his career. But who knows? Maybe, I mean, Awuzie, maybe a terrible signing at corner. We'll see. But I like, for the most part, what they've done this week, and they position themselves. I mean, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be an interesting offense, right? I mean, I think it was going to be anyway with Brian Callahan coming in and the new things they're going to try to do. But I think a big part of the offseason is trying, and we've talked about this, trying to position yourself the best you possibly can. Yes, to win, and yes, to try to get in the playoffs, and yes, to do all those things. But I think on the macro level for the franchise, positioning yourself as best you can to really determine what you have in Will Levis. And you're not going to figure out everything this next season, but you're going to figure out a lot. Like, you're going to figure out a lot of what he's made of, the fit with the new scheme, the fit with the new coach. You know, does he have the right stuff, the right DNA to be a quarterback? And you know, is he good enough? That's what it's going to come down to. Is he good enough to be your franchise quarterback moving forward? And again, you're not going to find out the answer to every single one of those questions this next season. But I think you need to position. What would be a shame is if, you know, halfway through the next season you were looking around and we were having the same discussion about Will Levis we were having last year, which is, yeah, I like some of the stuff he's doing, but it's hard to really know because he has no chance about there to, you know, when he drops back to pass, or the skill position's not good enough, or all these things. Like, if you dress left tackle in the draft and you hit on that, you're going to feel better about your offensive line. Your offensive line is going to be better than it was last year. And with Ridley and Hopkins, like, you feel pretty good about the skill position right now. So on the macro level of the franchise, I like what the Titans are doing in terms of putting weapons around Will Levis to determine what he is and what they've got at that position moving forward here.
Yeah, I'd love to know what Brian Callahan thinks of this group in comparison to his last group. Remember, with the Bengals, they've had offensive line struggles. I mean, they got to a Super Bowl despite offensive line struggles. But, you know, Burrow, Chase, Higgins, Mixon, Perrine, compared to Levis, Hopkins, Ridley, Pollard, Spears. And, you know, it's probably laughable it would have been laughable to even have that thought until they added Ridley. And I'm not saying, I mean, like you said, we know Burrow's great. We don't know much about Levis. We know Levis has ability, and we're going to find out. I think a year from now, we are going to have a lot more, clarity on where it's going. But, and Chase is in his prime, elite, top, absolutely receiver, and that's different. But, this is a pretty good tandem on paper, talent at receiver, and I like the backs. I guess the one thing missing is, they had C.J. Azoma, and he's out there, by the way. So is it time to go get him?
Or Bowers.
Well, then, yeah, there is Brad Bowers.
Just forego the left tackle position.
Yeah. No, but I mean, it's to me, they're a left tackle away from, on paper, having a chance to really be something next year. And yes, any of these things could turn out poorly, of course. I do also think that, and we mentioned the kicker, the offense is way different. Man, that defense still needs a lot of work.
Yeah, defense needs work. And, like I said, do I think the Titans are like some playoff team now? Probably not. I mean, who knows, right? I mean, look, we were having discussions last year about the Houston Texans being dog water, and they go win the division and win a playoff round. So would it be the world's biggest surprise if the Titans came out next year and made the playoffs? No, it would not. Would I pick that based on what they've done to this point? Probably not. But I do think the offense, if things do go well, and Hopkins is basically what he was a year ago, and Ridley is basically what he was in Jacksonville this past season, that's pretty good. That's pretty good 1-2 punch. I mean, it's not an elite 1-2 punch. That's a pretty good 1-2 punch that you got there with your wide receiver group. If Pollard is closer to the player he was 2 years ago rather than last year, coming off the injury and getting healthy, then that's a pretty good back that you've got. And then you got Spears coming into his second year. So, it's not hard to get to. The offense could be pretty good if some of those things work out. And of course, Levis has to take another step and has to put in that type of work. And, I have no doubt he'll put in the work. We'll see if that translates to success. But the Titans offense, I think, is positioning themselves where they're at least going to have a chance to be something heading into next season, which, I mean, this, Joe, but pretty early on last year, we knew the Titans offense did not have a chance to be anything based mostly on their line, but also at their skill position outside of DeAndre Hopkins as well at the wide receiver group.
Right. Yeah. So the Texans, we thought they'd be bad. They had been compiling picks, drafting some young players, so they had been helping the roster for a bit, but didn't know the impact of the new coach and really didn't know the impact of the rookie QB.
Yeah.
I mean, if Levis is good next year, then yeah, why couldn't this be a playoff team? Right.
Sure. Yeah.
Like, you're right. The bigger thing is finding out about him and charting your course. Like Rob says in the text line, thank you. Everybody keeps talking like, okay, we got our QB. We don't know anything about Levis really. Yeah. I mean, the Titans I think that it was definitely more good than bad last year. And it just was, the conditions were just so bad that you have to put an asterisk on all the results. So if you protect him, and I just can't imagine that this skill group is going to be not. I mean, they're going to at least be good, right? Pretty good.
I would think so.
It's hard to imagine. They bring in a head coach who's a play caller, who is an offensive coordinator, who this is what he does. He's an offensive schemer. Then I think we are in position here. That everyone can kind of find out probably pretty quickly about Will Levis. Not final conclusion or all that in 1 year, but they're doing the things around him if they get the left tackle to really get good information this year.
615-737-1025 is our phone number. Gentry Estes from the Tennessean coming up at 7:30. We'll get his thoughts on the Calvin Ridley signing. Coming up next, another big win for the Preds last night, 11-0-2 in their last 13 games. We'll break that down and take another look at the standings. Preds doing really well for themselves right now with the way that they're playing. More on that next. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game.
Puck chipped back for Sissons. His shot knocked the stick out of the defender, and then the Predators get the rebound down low, and Zucker has his first Predators goal. It's 4-0.
Jason Zucker on the board last night. The Preds win 4-2 in Winnipeg, and that is a 13-game point streak. They're 11-0-2 during that span. And Nick, I believe I'm correct on this. They have not lost in regulation since February the 15th.
That is correct.
So
yes.
we're coming up on a month. Tomorrow will be a month since they've lost in regulation. Obviously, a huge stretch here for the Predators. Joe, I thought they played great last night. They got up 4-0. Really, for the first 2.5 periods, they were taking it to the Jets. And then after it was 4-0, they basically just kind of hung back, and Winnipeg got a nice redirection goal and then one with 10 seconds left in garbage time to make it 4-2. But the Preds, I thought, for the most part, dominated the game last night. And look, Winnipeg did not have Mark Scheifele, so he's a big piece to what they do. But the Predators, I think, deserve a lot of credit for going on the road, winning the game the way that they did. And I just thought it was more of the same, Joe, of the way that they played. Nyquist was unbelievable last night. He continues to play great. Forsberg, obviously, with another goal. And Roman Josi is playing like a Norris Trophy level defenseman right now. I mean, the first two goals they scored, a crazy pass from Josi from his own end to Nyquist along the boards. And then he makes the play on the second goal to get the puck to Kiefer Sherwood, who scores right in the slot. So really, some of the themes that have been pretty consistent over the course of this winning streak, this point streak, were on display again last night. And by the way, UC Saros was really good again last night. So all systems go, continuing to be the case right now for the Predators.
That freaking Josi pass to Nyquist was stupid.
It was.
I needed the 1996 Fox glowing puck, to enjoy, the track of the puck. But
yes.
No, man, Josi, and I heard some of the post game. I was enjoying some Max Hers post game last night, driving home from Bridgestone Arena, and hearing Brunette talk about him. And it's and he said this before, but it's kind of like, man, I think some people, maybe even the league, are taking Josi for granted a little bit, And if you look at his second half, consider, he said it. I mean, this system was not comfortable for him early on. It's very different what some of the things that are being asked of him. But great player is going to adapt and figure it out. And I think we're seeing that. And, man, is he a difference maker right now? Is he a great player?
Well, he reaches the 50 assist mark again last night. So, I mean, the points are coming hot and heavy for him right now. He's figured it out, and he's playing great. And, look, I remember when they, a lot of attention this offseason when the Predators made the moves they made. Obviously, Ryan O'Reilly was the big fish, right, of the players that they brought in. I remember them signing Gus Nyquist and thinking to myself, okay, Nyquist he's a good player. He's not a great player, but he's a good player. He's got 58 points in 67 games, 40 assists, 18 goals. And he's been unbelievable. Like he's been really, really good. And I think last night was the 60th consecutive game that they've had that top line together, Forsberg, O'Reilly, and Nyquist. And Nyquist is playing awesome. Like he's 34 years old, and he's playing, if it's not the best hockey of his career, it's right there with it. I mean, what's his season high in terms of point production? I think is 60. I mean, he's gonna move past that. He's gonna end up with, 66, 67, close to 70 points this year if he keeps playing the way he's playing. I mean, Nyquist has been unbelievable for this team.
He's at his career high, actually. He's at 58. The most he ever had in a season was 54 with the Red Wings. He had 27 goals and 27 assists. So that was really early on in his career now as well. He's also
he had 60 in 18, 19. With the Red Wings and Sharks.
Okay.
So dang it, Nick.
The combination got me because he got traded. My dang it. Anyway,
we were having a great segment, Nick, and then you
came in there and ruined it.
Dang it.
That's just what I do. Also, here's something different that I will share. Nyquist is also the fourth ever Preds player that's 34 years or older to score at least 55 points in a Preds season. He's the first since Ribeiro did it back in 2014-15. So there you go.
You made up for it. Way to go.
That's a good stat. That's a very good stat. Yeah, Nyquist's been very good. He's also like, how we talk about like Gensel or whoever. I mean, it's very true, right? Like if you play with great players, it's amazing how the production can change. And not to
For sure.
take any credit from him at all, and I'm not.
Was ridiculous. Just to get to the loose puck and drop it between his legs, and of course Forsberg finished it off. But I mean, he's playing great. And look, when they put the Cole Smith, McCarron, Sherwood line together, I was like, okay, well, that'll be a couple game thing, and then you'll put it back. I mean, every game. I mean, at some point, they've been together this whole stretch here. I mean, at some point, you look at it and you just say, man, that's a good line. I mean, it's consistently been a good line, and they keep finding a way to put the puck in the net too, which you don't really expect from that group. But Sherwood with another goal last night. They had a couple other good looks where they could have scored. And then I do think it's big to see, for Zucker to get one to go for him last night. I still didn't think, Sisson, Zucker, and Beauvillier generated a ton, but good to see Zucker get one to go for him last night.
Yeah, that's another thing Brunette talked about after the games. You feel like Zucker in particular, you're coming in new and it's all this stuff, and you're just kind of throwing a guy out there. Last night felt like, okay, now he's in there, and it's all clicking for him too. So could end up being a real nice ad there.
Could be. And then on the back end, then this is where it starts to get a little hairy. So Fabro's out. Fabro's out for 2 or 3 weeks. And then Stasny gets hurt last night too. So Stasny took a hit in the corner and started grimacing, holding onto his shoulder, and left the game. So what's his status going to be? I mean, if he's hurt and he's out, are they going to call up somebody else and play them and continue to leave Tyson Barrie on the bench? Like, how many people have to get hurt for Tyson Barrie to get back out there? I think is an interesting question. But not. I mean, look. First off, until he got hurt, I thought Stasny was playing great, and in a league where a lot of people can skate really well, he jumps out with his skating.
You can see him. You notice
can see
him.
it. I mean, his skating is ridiculous. So hopefully he's not hurt too bad, and that he can be, kind of back in there on Saturday when they play Seattle. But we'll see what happens there. But if not, then all of a sudden a back end and a blue line that's been pretty fortunate for the most part this year, Joe, on the injury front, starting to pile up a little bit if Fabro and Stasny can't go. I mean, Fabro's not going to play Saturday, but if Stasny can't play either, it's going to be interesting.
I mean, how many suits does Tyson Barrie have? He's always got a nice one on, but you're asking a lot of the guy. Yeah. I mean, at some point, I mean, it is kind of nice to have. I mean, the guy can play.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
yeah. He's not been good defensively this year, but I mean, he's, he can play, and he can help you on the power play and all those things. But it is, when they brought up Stasny the other day, I was like, well, they're not bringing up Stasny for him to not play. So I do wonder if Stasny's hurt and they bring up like Del Gazzo or whoever it is. Tyson, have fun, buddy. see you over there on the bench.
How like, if you're him, how difficult is it to be prepared, even in terms of, and I understand he's been skating and all that stuff, but just to be thrown into a game at this point? I suppose as a veteran, difficult. You got to be ready though.
Be pretty difficult. I mean, it's been over a month since he played, right? So I mean, it's got to be pretty difficult. I mean, and I'm sure a big part of him was expecting / hoping to be dealt at the deadline, and when that didn't happen, it's kind of the reality of, well, barring a bunch of injuries, that's probably it for me this year too. So the kind of the mental game and staying involved that way.
Yeah, I mean, he at some point recently he had to have come to terms with, okay, that's it. We'll try again next year. And now it may be like, hey Tyson,
we need you to play.
Here's your skates.
Get it in there. 615-737-1025. Our phone number. Big win for the Preds last night. Coming up next, we'll be joined by Gentry Estes from the Tennessean. We'll get his thoughts on the Calvin Ridley signing and what the Titans have done to this point in free agency. That's coming up next. Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keezer here with you on this Thursday morning. Titans making some moves, some big moves in free agency. And to help us talk more about that, we go to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. And welcome in our friend Gentry Estes from the Tennessean. Gentry, good morning. How are you?
Hey, good morning, guys. I'm told Nick I'm tired, but I'm here. I always feel bad trying to talk about getting up early and being tired when it's you two, because I marvel at your ability to do this every day, especially after night games the night before.
Well, sometimes we don't do it every day, and we're both late to work like we were on Tuesday.
Yeah, exactly.
I heard about that, yeah.
Of course. Everybody's heard about that.
Of course. So Gentry, Calvin Ridley signed 4 years, $92 million, $50 million guaranteed. What did you make of that move by the Titans, and what do you make of the fit of Calvin Ridley with this group?
I mean, I think you have to like it, right? Because the last few days they've checked some boxes and they were active and they were doing things, but I think you were just kind of waiting for that big splash, right? Without knowing for sure that it was out there, that was how this was going to go. But this was certainly a big splash, and to go get the best receiver still available in free agency, I think said a lot about where this franchise is trying to go and how different this is going to be offensively with Brian Callahan. I think this was a move certainly to help him, to help Will Levis, to make this offense more explosive and fun to watch. I think it's going to be a lot different. In terms of Ridley, I mean, he's obviously a real talent and a guy who could be a game changer for this offense. I don't think he's a sure thing when you look back at the last few years. And, I think that's the only thing that really gives you some trepidation about this when you look at how much they're spending to get him. But it's a big-time move, and it's an indication that, I think you're going to see a tackle with the first pick in the draft, or their first-round pick in the draft.
Yeah, so Gentry, and of course you covered Alabama for a long time, so you've been very familiar. Yeah, I mean with him, and for a long time he was obviously a great player there. We were talking last night at the SC tournament, about. I mean, he stood out even there among some of the great receivers they've had. What are the concerns with him? Do you think? Because obviously the gambling thing was incredibly stupid and it was incredibly costly for him. He broke his foot, the year before that. But do you think there are concerns, that beyond just whether he still retains his speed and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you look back in the last 3 seasons, he's played 22 games. Now, a lot of that was the suspension, but I feel like, injury concerns and just the fact that he's 29. Maybe a little bit older than you would have liked to see this kind of guaranteed money. But, look, it's a good move. I think the Titans had to spend this money in a way to keep up with what's going on in their division. If you look around right now, the Texans are really getting a lot better. And I think the AFC South is transforming quickly. And this is what happens in this league when you have these teams that have quarterbacks on rookie deals, which is kind of turned over to where all these teams are doing this. So a team like the Texans with C.J. Stroud, they have money and they're spending it. And I think it's good for the Titans. They have cap space and they're being willing to spend it. And I think you expected that going into this process, but you didn't quite know what it was going to look like. And then early on, you're like, well, are they going to be willing to really shell out money to get somebody like this? And the fact that they did it, and to take this guy from the Jacksonville Jaguars, I think was a big move and something that I think signals intent as much as just gives them a very good player. I think they're serious about changing their offense and playing a different brand of football. And I think we probably knew that, but it makes it a lot more clear.
So, Gentry, what do you think of the other the 2 other big moves on the offensive side of the football they've made this week? One with Tony Pollard coming in at running back, and then, of course, Lloyd Cushenberry up the middle at center.
Yeah, I mean, you had to check that box at center. That was just something they needed to do, and I think it was smart on their part to go ahead and get that done. The money that's being paid to interior offensive linemen in this cycle suggested that you needed to identify your guy and go ahead and move, and they did that. I thought that was a good thing, and I feel like Tony Pollard's a good player. He's always going to be contrasted to Derek because they brought him in essentially to replace the guy in Derrick Henry, and that's maybe the one spot I feel like with a lot of these other additions you could make a case that you're at least equal to what you had, Mason Rudolph, Ryan Tannehill, but that's the one spot with Pollard, and it's no fault of Tony Pollard, but they got a little worse there just because I think you look at it's Derrick Henry. This guy's a Hall of Famer, and he can do a lot of things. But, Tony Pollard's a much different player, and I feel like he's going to fit in well with what they want to do. I think they had a lot of options there at running back. There were a lot of good players available. They could have gone a lot of different directions, and it's interesting to me that they grabbed a guy in Pollard who, he's productive, but it's a guy who's similar to kind of what you had in Tyjae Spears. Certainly, again, an indication of what I think they're going to try to do offensively. It's going to be a whole lot different from what we've seen.
So I feel like this team, Gentry, really needs – because, I think Autry's alive. At some point, Autry's going to fall off, but I bet you next year he's kicking everybody's butt for the Texans. That's just what I expect at this point. And Simmons has had not only Autry, but when Tier Tart was right, that was a really good compliment as well for Jeffrey Simmons. So I feel like that's, to me, like whatever money they've got, and they've got money still to spend. I feel like they've got to get somebody there. Is there anybody there? First of all, I guess do you agree with that? Is there anybody there you really like who's out there?
Well, I think Armstead for 49. That he's been linked. That would probably be. That's certainly a good guy. I would have liked to have seen. Daniil Hunter. He's going to Houston there with the Nico Autry. That's going to be a lot of fun to deal with twice a year. I agree with you on Autry, by the way. I feel like that guy's just going to be terrorizing all the other AFC South teams into his 40s. This just appears to be because he did it to Indy the last few years. He did the Titans before he got here. Yeah, he's that guy. But the problem with when you go into the free agency with so many needs, you're constantly evaluating. Okay, is this something we can throw money at to fix? And yeah, they do have a lot of money and the opportunity to do that, but it's like a blanket that's just too small. It's going to leave your feet uncovered or what, they have so many needs right now. And now I think it's to the point where you got to look at it and go, okay, can we get this in the draft? I think tackle's going to be that way. And I'm not sure D-line is though. And I agree with you. I think that's kind of a need that's out there. I think cornerback may be another. Cornerback, safety, secondary help. I'd like to see that. I'd like to see another inside linebacker. We can sit here and list off probably 7-8 things that they still need, and that's kind of the problem here.
So, Gentry, to that point, so going back to the Ridley signing, you got Hopkins and him as your 1-2 punch heading into next year. To me, it makes it pretty clear what you should do at number 7. You got to find a left tackle, and that's where you're going to do it, is in the draft. At 38 in the second round, and I know everybody's going to say best player available, and that's fine. I get that. But would you still strongly consider drafting a wide receiver that you feel like can be a really impactful player for you down the road, even though you still have Hopkins and Ridley for this season? Is wide receiver still a priority to you with one of those first 2 picks?
I think it probably is, only because there are so many good ones available. Or only so many. I think that's something that needs to be pretty high on the list. But I've heard people say that they're for sure going to go tackle 1 and then wide receiver 2. I think you absolutely have to have a left tackle with that first pick. I don't think it's a given that they are going to go receiver with the second pick, at least not now. But yeah, you got to look at it. These guys are a little older, and I told Joe last night, I feel like this Ridley move, the player this could end up helping more than anybody else is Treylon Burks. Because if he's healthy and out there, defenses are not going to pay any mind to him now. He's got some other guys to take away a lot of the attention, and I still feel like, I know you guys don't agree with me on this, I don't think. Robby, I don't think you do, but I wouldn't give up on Treylon Burks yet. I think he could still be a pretty good player, so I think you have to kind of consider that in the whole process too. And you're bringing back NWI this morning. How about that? NWI will be a tight
big deal.
Bury the lead.
Big deal.
We just keep burying the lead. Yeah, no, we've already determined Burks traded to the Chiefs and has a 2,000-yard season with Patrick Mahomes. So, but no, I'm with you. No, I think this could be good for him. All right, I'd be remiss, Ginger, if I didn't ask you here quick about Jerry Stackhouse. We were both there last night. We both wrote columns. I just read your column, very good column in the Tennessean. And I'm with you. I think last night, first of all, he said two like open the vein pressers. One was after they beat Tennessee last year, and then last night there wasn't enough of that. But I think you and I may differ a little bit. I just really don't know where this is going. You could definitely take last night like someone who knows he's going to be fired, but you feel more confident that that's going to be the outcome here after last night?
Yeah, I do. I feel like I would be surprised if he's back at this point. I think it just so many things, and you hit on this as well, Joe. It's just the negativity. You called it Butch Jones-esque, and it is kind of like that, where it just gets to the point that I just think you have to make a change to get your fan base back. The negativity on this is to a point where I just believe it only gets corrected with a change. And yeah, but the press conference last night was it was a Stackhouse that I don't think we've seen, just in terms of how reflective he was and the way he presented himself. It would have been nice to, I think for fans, it would have been nice to have seen some of that sooner. But at this point, you're 5 years in, it's going the wrong direction. I just feel like we're going to see a change.
Well, Gentry, awesome stuff as always. Appreciate so much you taking time to be with us this morning, and we'll talk to you soon.
You bet. Take care, guys. See you.
Gentry Estes from the Tennessean, our guest here on Robby and Rexrode. Coming up next, it's time for the Rex Rant. You can check it out every morning here on the program. We'll do that next. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game.
Sometimes he wakes up on the wrong side of the bed. And sometimes he's just, well, Joe.
Awkward moment, let's do it.
This is the Rex Rant, now on Robby and Rexrode.
Bottom line is, like, you all have to figure it out. But we're framing this as Tennessee over here and the NCAA, you're bad, you're going down. And it's not that simple. It's like, I don't understand.
It's time for the Rex Rant with Joe Rexrode. You can check it out every morning here on the program. We even got a little bit of Rexrode's English accent in that one, which I'm a big fan of. Need more of here on the program. Joseph, the floor is yours.
When was that random British accent thing? What was that from? What was I talking about?
I don't remember, but
oh my God.
I just know we need more of it.
Why do people listen to this crap? All right. Listen to it for Robby and Nick. All right. I just want to pump. You know I'm going to use this opportunity to pump up another athletic story, of course. But Cal Tucker and I, we worked very hard for actually a few weeks to tell the story of SEC men's basketball, going from really quite an embarrassment a decade ago. I mean, they were getting 3 bids 3 out of 4 years, and it was basically just Kentucky and everybody else, and it was not good, to what it is today. Gigantic increases in investment, like massive. Great coaches, way more great players, much better facilities. I mean, you can go across the league and find that just about everywhere. At least a significant upgrade, if not, new arenas or new basketball building. Vanderbilt has got a new basketball building. Mike Tranghese came in. Dan Leibovitz came in. Scheduling, officiating was bad, and I know, SEC officiating. We're going to have some complaints this weekend on some calls, but they totally revamped that too. And if you just look at everything that goes into like trying to make a conference good at men's basketball, it's as good as it gets right now. The Big 12 and the SEC are the top 2 leagues this season, bar none. There really isn't a close third. And if you want to look at a trend, the SEC and where it's been the last few years, and then the ACC and the opposite direction it's gone, this is not a coincidence. So, yes, the SEC needs one of its great teams to break through and win it all. It's been since 2012 with Kentucky. Quick aside, the Big Ten has been since Michigan State in the year 2000. But still, that's fair criticism. Yeah, it is wild. But that's a fair criticism. And there was a lot of comments on our story about that. Like, wait, you guys are talking about how awesome this league is. Where's the Natties? Where's the Final Fours? More teams need to make the Final Fours. But the SEC has several teams playing in Nashville this weekend who are capable, without smoke and mirrors, of getting to Phoenix and the Final Four, and that is no small thing. So now let me ask you, is there any irony that on the day Kyle and I ran this story, that I went to Bridgestone Arena to cover 2 Wednesday games, smallest crowds we'll see all weekend, and the freaking Wi-Fi didn't work on press row? Look, man, I don't want to be that guy, okay? I don't want to be that guy, but I'm gonna be that guy. Okay. The network's called It Just Means More. You can't call your Wi-Fi network It Just Means More and make all this progress and get these flowers and then not have the freaking Wi-Fi work. Can you?
Is their Wi-Fi network really called It Just Means More?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
I switched to the regular Preds Media Wi-Fi, which normally works fine for me. I fired off a tweet about this whining last night, because I'm gonna keep whining, this. And I just went with my phone on roaming and fired off a tweet. And Chris Martell's like, well, I think the Preds Wi-Fi thing. Like, no, do you ever have a problem with the Preds Wi-Fi?
On occasion, but not often.
I mean, I never do. But okay, so the Preds Wi-Fi didn't work either. So then I switched to my hotspot. Nope, nothing. I mean, the stats on the video board last night, they had like the scoring numbers for players. That went out for almost the entire Vandy Arkansas game. Like no one, it was like, free internet watching this game in there. Like, what's going on? Now, is it a huge deal that I wasn't able to throw in some posts in our live blog at The Athletic about the games? No, but I was expected to do that, and people on press row are going to be working all weekend, and they need Wi-Fi. So, Greg Sankey, I ask, please take a break from getting the SEC 8 automatic bids in the next playoff and guaranteed buys through 2040 and ruining the NCAA tournament, making it 347 teams, and fix the damn Wi-Fi. Thank you.
I'm glad that we could at least mention Greg Sankey by name. He's been under fire the last couple of weeks here on this program. Greg,
This needs to
fix
be
the Wi-Fi.
This needs to be, and if I see Greg over there today, this needs to be priority one, Greg. I'm sorry. Drop everything and let's fix the Wi-Fi. Thank you.
Can I offer an additional mini rant at the two of us? Because in retrospect, we really missed the boat this week. Now we had Corey Curtis on the program on Monday, and we talked about NFL free agency, a whole lot of different things. We never asked him if he referred to Lionel Messi as Carlos Messi.
Oh my god!
A huge missed opportunity on our front. And now people still making Carlos jokes on the text line, and I'm sitting here thinking to myself, we had Corey right there on Monday and never asked him if he thinks that Lionel Messi's name is Carlos.
That is ridiculous. What a week for us. Yeah, I mean, we're letting him just keep making just Packers jokes, and we could have been asking about Carlos. Wow. Well, let's all remember for next week, right? Let's all remember for Monday.
Get the freaking Wi-Fi fixed at the SEC, and let's get down to brass tacks with Corey on Monday about whether or not he thinks Leo Messi's name is Carlos, because I'm hoping he does.
Jared says Carlos Westbrook Akina. Just basically just put it in front of any name, and it works. It's comedy gold.
Have re-signed Carlos Westbrook Akine. CWI. Welcome back, baby.
CWI. My goodness.
Beautiful stuff. We'll be joined by Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports coming up next. We'll get his thoughts on the Calvin Ridley signing and what we've seen in NFL free agency to this point. Looking forward to that. The NCAA tournament right around the corner. It's time for you to sign up and play the official 1025 The Game Bracket Challenge, brought to you by ESPN Bet Sportsbook, Twin Peaks, and Volunteer Hose and Gasket. Go to thegamenashville.com/bracket challenge or the 1025 The Game app and sign up to play for your chance to win 4-day passes to Bonnaroo. Brackets will open after the teams have been selected, coming up on Sunday, March 17th. Also, it is SEC Tournament Week, as Joe Rexrode has referred to. Tune into 1025, 1063 The Game for updates of the SEC Men's Basketball Tournament this week, presented by ESPN Bet Sportsbook, Toyota, and Guinness. We'll have Charles Robinson coming up next. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063 The Game. Final hour, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keyser here with you on this Thursday morning. It is NFL free agency time of the year. Been really fun this week, especially around here. And to help us talk more about that, we go to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, and welcome in our friend Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports. Charles, good morning. How are you?
I'm good. How you guys doing?
We're awesome. Appreciate you taking time to be with us. Charles, Calvin Ridley to the Tennessee Titans, 4 years, $92 million, $50 million guaranteed. Reportedly, interest from the Patriots and, of course, the Jags, but he ends up here with the Titans. What did you make of that move by Rand Carthon and the Titans and the fit of Calvin Ridley here with Brian Callahan?
It was hard not to remember standing behind John Robinson at the league meetings and hear him talk about how there's no way he was going to pay A.J. Brown the kind of money that wide receivers were getting. And, and then have this signing come in and not be like, well, geez. Like, sometimes wide receivers get paid that money anyway, whether it's A.J. Brown or not. I think it's a good wide receiver to add to the mix, especially given, his skill set, deep threat guy. His season last year was definitely affected, I think, by Trevor Lawrence was banged up, I think, all season long, even beyond the ankle. When I was at the combine, I heard that, they were having issues with Lawrence's health, almost out of the gate there. And I do think that affected some of his production. Are there potential red flags? Yeah. I mean, look, anytime a guy gets suspended for a year, also someone who stepped aside said he was, dealing with mental health issues. Again, I don't want to say that, and, I hate putting that in the red flag category, but he obviously had a spate during his career that kept him off the field for the Atlanta Falcons. However, prior to all of that, this was a guy who I remember a number of teams were lining up to trade for him as a quality number one wide receiver option. So the talent is, I think it's unquestionable, and it's a huge upgrade for them at the wide receiver position. Gives them what I think is a true number one locked in for the next few years. Free agency in general, I think, has been really good for Will Levis, the Tony Pollard edition. Definitely the backfield, you're going to see a different kind of running game or a different kind of backfield for the Titans. And I think just what they do offensively, Lloyd Cushenberry, another good quality addition. I think it opens up, obviously, with the Ridley signing, opens up what you can do with that first-round pick. I would assume that, I can tell you, I think a lot of teams are looking at the Titans now, believing that's an offensive tackle pick for Tennessee. But I think the thrust of free agency, okay, this is what Rand Carthon's doing. You can see how they're building it. And I think if you're Will Levis, you got to feel pretty good because you feel like, all right, they're shaping this around me right now. And, we'll see. I'm sure they're not done. There are going to be other additions now that we get to this second wave where maybe it's a little more cost-effective additions to the team. But very good, I think, off the bat. By the way, Cheeto, too. Chidobe was another player that is I've always liked. I liked him going back to Dallas, liked him in Cincinnati. Very good, I think, veteran corner who is not wildly expensive, but adds a lot, to that group, the mix. Nick Folk, Kenneth Murray. There's just been a lot of really good signings, I feel like, in terms of the talent and some of the veteran experience brought to the team. Even, Mason Rudolph, I think, showed down the stretch last year that there's quality and there's talent there to add to the backup quarterback spot. I have to assume he'll win that job as the number two. And, I think top to bottom, as far as a first, foray goes for Rand Carthon, this looks pretty good.
Well, second technically, but yeah, it does feel like the first.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Yeah. It's first where it's like, we know, right? That right. This whole thing is geared around him now.
Yeah. So, okay, a couple of things on Ridley, Charles. first of all, we were talking about this. So it's like he's 29. It's a lot of money. Obviously, sometimes receivers lose their speed in their 30s. I mean, we'll see on that. But first of all, do you believe that the Jags were seriously wanted to keep him? And second of all, do you think there are any off-the-field concerns with him? We know the gambling thing happened. It was stupid. Beyond that, any concerns?
To the Jags, I mean, I think the Jags botched it, just in terms of how they could have kept him. I think in retrospect, knowing how everything unfolded, they could have used the franchise tag on him and just juggled that a little differently than they did. I think the pick give up complicated things a little bit for them. But I didn't. There was nothing I had heard where they didn't feel like, hey, this is a quality player, and he had a good relationship from everything I understood with Trevor. And so I think they feel like this is definitely a loss. I also, though, I can tell you this, I don't think they thought the numbers, at least, maybe a month before free agency. You get to the combine, I never heard the numbers where Ridley ultimately ended up. As you said, there were some other competitors there. And I think that drove this a little bit, but I mean, I think the money probably factored in a little more than the Jaguars ultimately, thought it would. The off the field stuff, I don't, he wrote the piece. What was it for? Did he do that for Players Tribune when he came out and he talked about what Yeah. I mean, I was impressed by that when he did it because, it was a situation where I think a lot of us didn't really know what was going through his head and how everything had unfolded. He had said, obviously, some things on social media about exactly what he had done. But I think taking the step, going to Players Tribune, explaining himself in a way that I thought was pretty thoughtful, I think that you could see why teams were willing to, especially the Jaguars, were willing to give him a second chance. It's still, of course, it was a boneheaded decision, and you think you like to believe he worked on this and learned from it. After it's tough to sit out for a year and be a pariah. I mean, really at the same time. I mean, it was so shocking when that whole thing happened, and I remember initially a lot of people were like, "This dude's career is over. Like he's done. He's never going to come back." So I'm sure that's a lot for him to have gone through, but I never heard anything out of the Jaguars that this was like, there's this problem or he's not a good locker room guy. I never heard any of those things. I think, especially coming out of the combine, the thought process was that they would re-sign him, but they would re-sign him beyond that deadline that would have elevated the draft pick that they sent to Atlanta in exchange for him. But, again, I think maybe the one shocking thing is just kind of where the money went for him. But I would say of all the teams that probably needed what he brings to the table, the Titans are a good match because Levis drives the ball down the field. If you have a quarterback with the skill set that Levis has, particularly a guy who can get it downfield, you better have some wide receivers who are fast enough to, make that happen. And this guy fits. I understand what you're saying about the age, but realistically, what are we talking about with this contract? I mean, it's a 2 to 3 year deal. I know the numbers are $492.
Yeah.
I don't consider almost any contract now really beyond 2 years, particularly with teams willing to, if there's money that goes into the third year, which is, somewhat rare, a lot of teams will eat that now if they're not happy with the player. So really it's a 2 year commitment. And where his age is at, I don't think he should be affected by it.
Charles Robinson with us here on the program. So Charles, 2-part question for you. Number one, what do you make of the fit of Derrick Henry with the Baltimore Ravens? And number two, what do you make of kind of the changing around the league of scenery that we saw from the running back market this week?
Yeah, Henry, I mean, it's of all the places that you'd put him, right? I mean, it makes sense. I think he and Saquon Barkley ending up in Philadelphia, you know what those teams are about, you know what they bring to the table, and Henry really fits well with the mentality that the Ravens want to have in their run game. It's like I said with the Titans, you're going to have it's just going to be a different look. It's not it's less of a power run game. It's more about with the Titans, it's more about the different aspects, matchups that you can bring to the table, rather than we're just going to beat the crap out of you and eventually you're going to wear down and break. And I think that's exactly what the Ravens are looking for. I think it's the team that will get whatever he's got left in the gas tank. I think they'll definitely get that out of him. And the surrounding personnel, it made total sense for Henry. Like, to me, it was like Patrick Queen goes to like Pittsburgh. I'm like, yep, yeah, okay. Like it makes sense with what they like to do defensively. This is what makes sense for Baltimore offensively. The running back position in general, I think it was a little overblown. This whole idea that it's like, oh, it's the year of the running back, and look at all the traction and these big deals. Really, there's one big deal that was done. I mean, you look at Josh Jacobs with Green Bay. Initially, I was like, wow, what a sign. And then I looked at the contract. I'm like, this is a 1-year deal. I mean, basically, it's a 1-year contract for him. It's an impressive 1-year contract, I think, because he'd walk with over $14 million. But he could also be in free agency again next year that quickly. So the commitment beyond the Saquon Barkley deal, it felt like, sure, running backs are getting the attraction that feels a little bit different. It's a poor running back class in this year's draft, so you see why some of that is happening. But I didn't see any of the long-term commitments where I'm like, wow, teams are really making a serious commitment to these players. And then even the salaries, man, it feels like every other position, as the cap has been blown out, we've seen elements of that position. We've seen the top end change. And even, for some, the middle class change. Running back hasn't. I don't, at least not commensurate to where the cap has gone. And then when you reflect it against other positions, I still feel like, yeah, a lot of guys, change spots, and it's interesting. And it does reflect a willingness to spend, at least in an initial year, for a running back. But I don't see the commitment that makes me think, oh, it's back. It feels like it was before to me. And I think it was curious how the media, I feel like a lot of us just jumped on that as being the big, huge early storyline of free agency. The Saquon deal, I will say, is, that's pretty legit. And, I guess I hope they better hope he stays healthy for what they committed to him.
We just want the running backs to be happy.
Yeah, we do. That's what we're about here on this program.
You know what, Joe? They have Wi-Fi. Okay, they're fine. Their Wi-Fi works, so they're pretty happy.
I hope so.
That makes one of us. We'll have more with Charles Robinson with Yahoo Sports coming up next. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Continuing our conversation with Charles Robinson of Yahoo Sports.
Charles, you wrote about Justin Fields, fascinating domino here. Obviously a big domino, Kirk Cousins going to Atlanta, but Justin Fields, the market, the situation there. I thought you had a really interesting idea for what might be a good fit for him.
Yeah, I think it was interesting as things progressed last week. You come out of the combine and you start to talk to agents and, other personnel people just about what they thought, where the landscape was going quarterback-wise. And, I had a really prominent agent who's done, trades with facilitated trades for his clients before, getting them out of certain situations, and he just said to me, he's like, hey, man, Fields' trade market's gone. He's like, as a starter, he's like, when you stack it up now, kind of knowing where the interest is amongst other teams, either from the standpoint of drafting a quarterback or, going out and getting either Russ at that point or Kirk Cousins. He's just like, I'm telling you, this is not a starting chair for him right now unless something dramatic changes. And then that's obviously what has unfolded. And, now you're to the point where, as this agent said, he's like, don't just look for where's the weak quarterback. Let me figure out a way to stick him there or make a trade there happen. He said, you put him where a weak quarterback is, maybe it's not a good team. And yeah, maybe he beats the guy out in 2024, but he has, it's a poor surrounding for him, doesn't have great traction. And the next thing you know, he's hitting free agency where people are really down on him versus where they are right now as a trade asset. So, to me, I think when you look at what the fit is and knowing that this team is working on their backup quarterback spot, they want to improve it. The Eagles have a need at backup quarterback. I don't think they want to go into 2024 with Tanner McKee being their number two. And they know that Hurts takes punishment. There's a possibility he's a guy who could miss games. And I think they want somebody in there who has starting level experience. A lot of those guys have already been plucked elsewhere as backup quarterbacks. And then you look at Fields and you're like, okay, well, this guy's, it's 1 year of control. You're not going to pick up the 5th year option. He's making, once the roster bonus kicks in, he's making $3.2 million basically in base for whoever deals for him. So it's a pretty, cheap, considering level of experience, it's a pretty cheap backup quarterback option. He fits what their offense does. I mean, the RPO stuff that they run, it would make, I think it gives him more traction in terms of what he does best on the field right now as a runner. I think Kellen Moore being the OC there, even for Fields, that's potential upside because I think Moore vaults back to the top of head coaching lists if he can put together a high-end, elite level Philly offense this year. He's going to be a guy who teams will be interviewing next year potentially as their head coach. And now Fields knows his playbook and he'll be a free agent. So if Philly, everything is, aces for them and Moore vaults to the top of head coaching lists and Fields has a successful run as a backup there, now he has a free agency destination. So there's just a lot of things with the Eagles that make sense in terms of Justin Fields. I don't think that's what he wants. He wants to go out there and be a starter next season. But that's just not available for him right now. And unless something changes between now and, when they have to make a decision on him, which I think is by the draft, this to me is kind of the creative outside the box team that maybe a lot of people aren't thinking about. And I know Howie Roseman right now is working on figuring out what he wants to do at the backup position.
What about Kirk Cousins to Atlanta? What do you make of kind of that decision and the fit for him with the Falcons?
I'm curious to see with Cousins what ultimately unfolds in terms of how the end came in Minnesota first and foremost, because I do think, and I think we talked about this on the phone or on previous shows, like Kevin O'Connell wanted to keep him. Like I know he wanted Kirk Cousins to be their starting quarterback next year. But as we talked about in previous shows, I think Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, the general manager there, was just like, we got to figure out the guarantees. Like we can't just guarantee, keep giving these fully guaranteed contracts. And, for Atlanta to step up the way that they did with Cousins and the $100 million in guarantees, which, now it's going to take his career earnings to at least $321 million. He's a bag securing guy, and and the Falcons had the bag, and it makes sense 100% in terms of their roster construction. They have a lot of talent there right now. I think whenever you talk to anybody in that organization the last couple of months, they would just keep repeating over and over, if we can just figure out the quarterback spot, if we can just resolve the quarterback spot. Well, this was the best veteran resolution that was there. I personally still think they should have gotten involved with Lamar Jackson a year ago. Arthur Blank didn't want to do that. So, Kirk Cousins ended up being the guy there. But I think they have the talent to squeeze out, a couple quality years for him. I think the division that they're in, the NFC South, it should instantly, I think, make that, not that they weren't before, but it should instantly make them, in my mind, the leading candidate to win that division this year. So, I think for what it was and what the Falcons needed, and Kirk feeling like, hey, I want the structure that I want the guarantees that I want. This makes the most sense. So, but I'm in the long term, though, I'm very curious to see whether the focus gets put on Minnesota, and is this sort of the first sign that, hey, maybe the head coach and the general manager there are on the same page, but maybe not entirely on the same page. So,
do you think Kirk Cousins can be a Super Bowl winning quarterback?
Oh man, I'll tell you what. I think operating that offense that he operated, which is like the McVay-Shanahan offense, he had gotten to the point when he tore his Achilles that he was finally. It had taken him basically 2 years to fully be able to master that offense. But there was a reason why when he tore his Achilles, he was playing at I think arguably the highest level of his career, is because the offense does suit him. And once he had it nailed down, I think they felt like that play, that level of play that they saw prior to the torn Achilles, was he'd leveled up as a player. So to me, I'm like, if that's real, then we were seeing something from Kirk Cousins we'd never seen before, and I would have liked to have gotten an opportunity to see that on a playoff stage. Now he goes into the same offense in Atlanta. The OC runs the same deal. It comes from the Rams, so he already knows the playbook. They're calling the same things. As long as the Achilles is okay, I think we should still see the guy that we saw last year, and they have the surrounding pieces for him to play at a high level. I can't say, he's not, what do they always call it? Like the personnel guys, trucks versus trailers. Like, is somebody's pulling you to a Super Bowl, or are you pulling him? He's a trailer, I think but also, Flacco won a Super Bowl. Now, granted, the team around him was unbelievable. The defense was great. You had all these elements, and he caught a heater, unbelievable heater at the right time. I think Cousins is capable of that, but he doesn't. If you ask me who are all the Super Bowl, quarterbacks capable of winning a Super Bowl who are 30 and over, he'd probably be a little down the list for me, because he hasn't proven it, right? I mean, what do you guys think? You got to see him prove it, and until they prove it, you're going to continue to question him. Just wait. I mean, Trevor Lawrence is going to sign a contract extension. We're going to go, all right, but has he really lived up to everything we thought? And is this guy worthy of being the highest paid player in the NFL? But that's the kind of contract he's going to sign when he does an extension.
Charles, last thing for you here. Houston bringing in Daniil Hunter. They've traded for Joe Mixon.
Yeah.
Danico Autry here from the Titans. I mean, they're loading up. What do you make of what the Texans have done to this point in free agency?
Oh, it's the going for it, like off season for them. I don't think there's any question. As you said, I mean, those additions, their defense was already, it looked nice last year, especially in spurts. It looked really good. And, I think the veteran additions that they've made are, it's geared toward flipping a switch on this. Like they're not going to be patient. They're going to go ahead and go for it now. And, let's see. I'm curious if CJ Stroud was unbelievable last year. There's no question in my mind that that's real, but teams aren't nobody's caught flat-footed against him this year. Like, everybody's going to know that this is the dude, and let's see, what gets thrown at him in 2024. I want to see him replicate what he did as a rookie, and I don't think he can just replicate. I think he's got to continue to get better. And but yeah, there's of all the teams that I think had the splashy sort of free agency and an off season so far, I think the Texans are the one where you're like, okay, they feel like they're on track, and they're putting their they're pushing the gas pedal as much as they possibly can to try to become contenders as soon as possible in the AFC. So they're going to be a handful in the division. I wouldn't. If you'd ask me, hey, how's the division shape up? I'd be like, I'd just be worried about Houston right now. Like every other team, there were pluses and minuses, but Houston is the team that I feel like you're going to be aiming at competing with long term now. And that's when I think about Levis. I mean, that's like, all right, you need him to round into elite form, not just to win games, but Stroud might be a bear to deal with for the next decade in the division. So. Definitely impressed by what they've done. And one other thing, too, I want to bring up. You guys didn't bring it up, but I think I should because Joe asked me the question, I think, early in the season this year about Baker Mayfield, and I was like, the dude's toast. He's never going to be a starter. Like this is – I couldn't have been more wrong. I mean, congratulations to Baker Mayfield for putting together the season that he did. And I think I even kind of banged Mike Evans a little bit on the show at one point, and clearly that was not my sharpest call. So, but – I will say this. We can go ahead and timestamp this. I'm not completely convinced that we're going to like that signing by the Buccaneers in a year or two. We're going to start to – I think Baker had a lot of success in Tampa, but I question the teams that success was achieved against.
Let Baker bake.
Let Baker bake. Let Ran run. Right? Don't say let Ran cook. Let Ran run.
I kind of like let Ran run better.
I kind of like that too. Wow.
Maybe
excellent contribution today, Charles. Excellent.
That's I saved the best for last.
Yes, you did. Well, Charles, we know it's a busy time of year. Thanks so much for taking time to be with us this morning, and we'll talk to you next week. All
right. I appreciate it, guys. Joe, relax on the press Wi-Fi. Nobody cares, by the way, Joe, when we complain about the tools we have at our disposal. Nobody cares.
you would be throwing an absolute tantrum. So
I would have thrown. I would have been the biggest baby on earth. No, my diaper would have been off. Everyone would have seen my bare butt. I would have been absolutely. It would have been you and me. I would have been in the box ranting together.
Yes, we've been there.
God, would love to see it. Be pretty funny. Good stuff. Thank you, Charles.
Hey, man.
All right, guys. Take care.
Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports, our guest. We'll react to what Charles had to say. More thoughts on the Calvin Ridley signing by the Titans coming up next. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
FanDuel, putting the ball in your court for the rest of the NBA season. Joe Rexrode here to let you know that right now new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. Again, $200 if your bet wins. Bet on the NBA with a wide range of bet types. You got quick bets. You got your live same-game parlays, player props, and more. Long-term, pains me to say it, but I think the Celtics winning this whole thing is how I'm looking at the situation. We'll see if they can actually get it done this time. Visit FanDuel.com/Joe102. Make that first bet a layup. FanDuel is an official sportsbook partner of the NBA, and you must be 21 or older and present in Tennessee. First online world minimum wage are only $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued is now withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. See terms at sportsbet.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call the Tennessee Red Line 800-889-9789.
Welcome back in. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, brought to you by Chuck McDowell and Medical House Calls, Middle Tennessee's best medical care in the comfort and safety of your own home. For more information, go to medicalhousecalls.com. Medical House Calls, where the nearest clinic is your home. Robbie Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keys are here with you. Appreciate Charles Robinson for being with us. Titans' big move yesterday, signing Calvin Ridley, 4 years, $92 million, $50 million guaranteed. Joe, we talked a lot about the Ridley contract today. So as we start to piece together all of it, what do you make of the deal? What do you make of the money? And what do you make of the fit that you think he'll be with this Titans offense and Will Levis?
Before I answer that question, because I don't want to forget this, how about Charles saying he heard John Robinson say that at the owners' meetings, that he wasn't paying AJ. You know, Charles, you could have saved us a lot of trouble, buddy, by telling us right then. Huh? Thanks a lot,
That'd
Charles.
be nice to know.
I'm gonna have to yell it next week.
Zach from Football and Other F Words pointed out, I believe the meetings that year were like March the 27th through the 30th, and the draft was a month later. So that'd be nice to know.
That was a month of hand wringing and speculating, all that. We could have just figured it out right then. Yeah, that's not going to help J-Rob's post job approval rating.
Probably not
on the interwebs there. But as far as the deal for Ridley, it's a big number. You know, like Charles said, I mean, you do have to keep all these things into context. Like the running back numbers, they are bigger than I thought, but they're still, if you look like a percentage of cap and you look at it compared to the inflation everywhere else, it's still underwhelming. And the inflation everywhere else is overwhelming. or it's at least whelming, but it's probably whelming to overwhelming. So, I mean, even like making the comparison, as we dunked on earlier in the show, anybody like screaming at the Titans for not giving that deal to A.J. Brown, but giving it to Ridley. Well, yeah, that GM got fired. But also, like, if you compare this deal to what A.J. got even just a couple years later, I mean, it keeps going up, man. So I don't have a problem with the money. It is when you first see it, you're like, whoa. I also think it's really interesting that Charles, I mean, I took from what he said there, what it kind of has appeared to be and has been reported, which is that the Jags did want him back. But, you know, there's a limitation on what you're going to pay. And the Titans came in with the money. I mean, I think Diana, I'll find Diana Rossini's tweet, but she tweeted something to that effect last night too, which is basically like the Titans came with the money. It's how they got Hopkins, and now it's how they got Ridley. Came with the best deal. And sometimes it's just as simple as that. So I think that's a good reducing of the red flag a little bit, right? Like the fact that Nick Holtz is with him is here, and they went after him. And as long as it's not like the Jags are like, please leave, then you feel a little bit better about the deal. I mean, the guy's really talented. I think that last year's production, it wasn't a great year. It wasn't a great year for anyone there in Jacksonville, but that production from him after the suspension, after the broken foot, I think answered a lot of questions. And, obviously you just hope, if you're the Titans and if you're a Titans fan, that getting this new start here after the 1 year prove it deal, he's going to be motivated to show everyone why and not just be happy to get the bag.
Well, and you got a 1-2 punch now with Hopkins and Ridley. And again, Hopkins got one more year. So to me, I like it on paper. I like, the options that you now have at wide receiver. By the way, Nick Westbrook-Akine re-signing today. So a 1 year deal. So Burks, NWI, Ridley, Hopkins, that's the kind of the makings of your receiver core right now. I said it earlier, Joe, and I stand by it. Like, to me, it doesn't change my draft plan at all. Like, I think it makes it more likely than it already was, and I think it was pretty likely beforehand, that you're going on offensive tackle at number 7 overall. But to me, if there's a receiver there at 38 in the second round that you really like, take him. You got Hopkins on 1 year left on the deal. And look, maybe that receiver wouldn't get on the field as much as you would like in year one with Ridley and Hopkins in front of him. But I think it's worth it if there's a receiver that you really like in the second round. To me, the Ridley signing should not change that for the Titans.
I agree. Look, Hopkins may just be one more year. You may just have the 1 year with Hopkins and Ridley together. You don't know what's going to become of Burks. I mean, you don't know for sure that NWI is going to become a 10-year All-Pro. I mean, that still could be in the future for him, but I'm going to guess no. But yeah, I mean, if you get it's a great receiver draft, well documented. There's a lot of guys. If you could get a receiver to sort of be the replacement for Hopkins, then now look, you also, and I'm probably more open to this idea than you are. I mean, maybe Gentry's more open than I am, but like maybe Traylon Burks does end up growing into, being somebody who can be a more significant player, but you can't count on that. I mean, you can't count on it right now. It's going to be interesting to see how this affects him, but I'm with you.
There's been a lot of that over the last day. I get the thought process. I really do. I cannot get there with Traylon Burks. We did so much talking about Traylon Burks last year, heading into camp and heading into the season. I can't get there with Traylon Burks until I see him do it in an NFL game on the field consistently at this point. So I get it. Like there's a lot of talk from Titans fans of, oh, this could be really good for Traylon Burks, and just wait till Traylon Burks breaks out this year. Yeah, I can't do it. Like I'm not getting there with Traylon Burks until I see it actually happen.
No, I get it. You're a Traylon Burks hater. It's totally fine. He's your new Marcus Mariota. No, I mean, in all seriousness, yeah. I mean, it's gravy.
Traylon Burks ever caught his own pass? I don't think so.
Well, he did, but he did make an incredible cross field pass, though. One of the most amazing trick plays I've ever seen drawn up. Speaking of the Jaguars, yeah, I'm with you. I also though think that, well, first of all, I mean, I think you could get quality at receiver in the 4th round, but I also think that it's best available to me in the second. If you do what we think they'll do, someone asking, Officer Watson asking from Clarksville asking, like, who could, or no, it wasn't him. Somebody else asked. Sorry, I can't keep up. Like who's a threat to take Alt before the Titans? I think the Chargers would be a threat to potentially take Alt before the Titans. So we'll see how that shakes out. But if you do that, if the first round addresses left tackle and you draft the guy you think will be your left tackle for the next, several years for a rookie deal and a big second deal, then I still think like best available in the second round. And I think best available is a good way to go anyway. But if you have, someone mentioned Tavondre Sweat, who is a ridiculous athlete at D tackle, an edge, then I don't think then you take best available. But if it's a receiver, yeah, do that. Absolutely.
615-737-1025, our phone number. Your final thoughts on the signing of Calvin Ridley and the other moves that the Titans made yesterday. We'll get into those as well coming up next. Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063, The Game. Welcome back in. Final segment of the day. Robby and Rexrode live from our Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Game Nashville studios, keeping your home feeling comfortable all year round. Taking your thoughts on the Titans, 615-737-1025. Big day in free agency for them yesterday. Let's go to our 1025 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, and welcome in Matthew. Matthew, good morning. Thanks for calling in.
Hey, good morning, guys. How are y'all doing?
We're good.
Great.
Good. Hey, what about, and y'all may have already talked about this, and if you did, I'm sorry, but do you think that there's a chance that the Titans will get that tight end out of Georgia with a 7th pick, or you think he'd already be gone, or is he not that early?
Yeah, thanks for the call, Matthew. I mean, do I think they'll do it? No. Do I think he'll be there and available for them to do it? Yes, I do. I think Brock Bowers will be there. And look, I would consider it. I mean, look, and I've watched a lot of Brock Bowers. I think he's going to be an absolute stud in the NFL. So it's hard for me to get past that in terms of just like dismissing Brock Bowers out of hand, because I think he's going to be very, 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 very good in the NFL. At the end of the day, you got to find a left tackle. And I think whether it's Joe Alt or elsewhere, you got to do that in the draft here. And I think the signing of Calvin Ridley does kind of tell me maybe how the Titans are leaning with the number 7 overall pick. But I mean, I can't just outright dismiss Brock Bowers, but I think they're going left tackle.
Yeah, the mock draft world, which, look, I'm guilty of this like a lot of people, turns into like, you know, it becomes like you think it's reality. It's not. It's mock drafts. But in mock draft land, Brock Bowers is going into the teens before he's picked. So take that for whatever it's worth. I mean, some of these mock drafts are done by people who talk to a lot of people, and they're not just guessing. But yeah, I think he'll be available. I would not hate the pick. I know this is weird, but I thought he was like a 6'6" monster, and he's only 6'3", and that bothers me. Why is that? I don't know. I know that's weird, but like, I'm with you. Watching him play football, I think he's going to be great in the NFL. So I wouldn't hate that pick either. And by the way, at left tackle, I'm a Fashanu guy. So baby hands and all, I'm on the Fashanu train. And so maybe if I'm right, then maybe someone takes Alt, and it'll be clear for them, and they should take him. I know that Zach says, the Chargers have Slater, and they've never drafted a tackle in the top 100 ever. Not sure how relevant that is, but worth mentioning.
It's worth mentioning. I mean, look, what you love, I don't know if it probably won't shake out this way. You'd love, if you're the Titans, to have no tackles off the board by the time 7 comes around and you got your pick of whoever you want, be that an Alt or a Fashanu, whoever you got as your highest rated tackle.
Well, except again, if the decision is made for you, then you didn't screw it up, right?
That is true.
Like if you have to pick between Alt and Fashanu, you pick the one who's not good and the other one's an All-Pro, you screwed it up. But if someone already takes one of them, then there you go. It makes it easy for you. I mean, it depends on how you want to look at it.
I will say, and we'll get more into this tomorrow, though, now that Cousins is in Atlanta, like the idea of having to move ahead of Atlanta to draft a quarterback, I would assume that probably doesn't help the Titans in terms of like a team trying to get in front of them. I mean, I guess if you're Atlanta, you could still draft a quarterback, but I'd be surprised if they did that with the money they're just going with Kirk Cousins. So maybe the trading scenario of a team trying to move in front of Atlanta to get a quarterback, maybe that's less likely now with Kirk Cousins in there. I mean, somebody's going to want a quarterback, and somebody might move up in order to do it, but the Atlanta part of it seems dead.
Right. Like, yeah, exactly. The directly needing to get in front of Atlanta is over. So that does probably reduce the chances that they'll move back. Matthew asked, did we share the same reaction to Mason Rudolph as Jared? I didn't hear it. Apparently he had a total meltdown. I have no problem with Mason Rudolph. He wouldn't be my first choice. I like Dobbs better. Yeah, I like Flacco better. You're paying more for Flacco, paid less for Rudolph, but Rudolph is fine. It's not a terrible thing. He's a backup quarterback who could win you a game or two in a pinch, and that's what you need from a backup quarterback.
That's going to do it for us today here on the program. Jason, Big Joe coming up next. You're listening to 102.5, 106.3 The Game.